What's up everybody, and welcome back to another Addicted Fishing video. Today we're going back to our roots with a little tutorial video on the 3 top techniques, in my opinion, if you want to catch more trout on creeks and rivers. So without further ado, let's get started. What we're going to go over first is my trout bag and my rod setup. We're going to go over everything, and as we go out and fish this afternoon, we're going to go over a little bit more specific on each technique. But this is what my trout bag looks like, especially in the springtime and the summertime when you go out to hit these small creeks and rivers that we have all over the country. So the 3 techniques I'm going to stress on the most today are the spinner, the addicted fixed float, and the worm and fly, and of course, my new favorite, the sculpin twitching jig. So we're going to start off with the spinner. This is probably the most easy to use and well-rounded technique that you can possibly have. It works in all different styles of water, and really it's the most fun and easy technique to pick up if you're just learning how to trout fish. What I'm using for my spinner rod is a Kuma Solilo. This is a 2 to 6 pound rod, 7.5 feet long, and the reel I have on this is a C30 Kymar. That 7.6 rating is perfect because it has the length to be able to whip out light spinners, and using this smaller reel is very nice because it picks up line quickly and you can fit quite a bit of line on these reels. The line that I'm using on this C30 is a 20-pound addicted enforcer braided line, and it might seem like that's a little bit heavy, but 20 pound is very nice for casting small spinners. 1, because it goes out of your guides very easily, and 2, it's very easy to see. You can actually see where it's fishing through the runs and identify right where your spinner is actually going through as you're breaking apart the run. To kind of counteract that very high vis line, I tie a bumper on here, and the bumper is just some monofilament or some fluorocarbon line that I use a blood knot or a variety of other uni knots that you can use to attach that. This is a blood knot. Basically, figure out which one you're best at tying. Even a little swivel put in line here can work if you're not very good at tying these knots, but it's very imperative with that high vis line to have some sort of bumper, whether it be fluorocarbon or monofilament. On here I have 8-pound monofilament line because it likes to sink down. It's hard for the fish to see, and it makes it easy to get in there and fish. Right on the end of the line, I go with my spinner. And I like to go over a few of these spinners. There's a few different styles that I think work best in moving water in creeks and rivers like this. First being the Panther Martin. This is a size 6, one of my very favorite lures. But as we go over here, you can see kind of the different styles of lures that you're gonna wanna pick up when you go shopping. We have the Mep spinner, we have the rooster tail, we have the Panther Martin, and of course, another rooster tail. But what's most importantly about when you go out and shop for spinners is just to have a variety of sizes, a variety of weights, and a variety of colors. Each place that you're going to be fishing is going to have something that works a little bit better than the other. So having a good variety of spinners, a good variety of sizes, and a good variety of colors is very important when you go hit the water. All right, so now that we know the basics, let's go hit the water and show you how to fish it. Wow, what a place to be. Let's learn how to fish a spinner. All right, everybody, now this is my idea of what a perfect spinner run looks like. We have moving current, we have soft current on the inside, fast current on the outside, big boulders spread out all the way through the hole, and tons of places for these fish to sit behind in their little pursuit lanes to try to catch their prey and the food that they're eating coming down the river. So the way I'm gonna break this down is pretty simple. I'm gonna create a method that makes me move through the river, makes me move down through the hole, and it allows me to cover every little section of water as I move through this and effectively fish it all without missing any spots where these fish can live. Now the way I'm gonna do that is a close, middle, far, and a 2-step technique. So what I'm gonna do in this situation is I'm always gonna make my first cast right about to the nearest area that I think fish can live. Because it's crazy sometimes where these fish can actually be and how close to the bank that you're fishing from they'll actually sit. So my first cast I always want to make close. My second cast I'm always going to make to the middle of the river. And I'm going to keep my rod tip pointed down, slowly reeling, making sure that spinner blade is spinning and that there's a nice amount of tension on my line, not too much to where that spinner is coming up to the surface, but just enough to allow it to go downriver and still spin at the same time. My third cast is always going to be out to the middle of the river. I'm going to check that far area, I'm going to throw it out into the center, work that fast current, again with my tip down, reeling slow the whole time. And after that third cast, I'm gonna imperatively take 2 steps after that third cast. So I'm gonna go 1 and 2. And now I'm gonna be covering a whole different section of river. So I'm gonna start close, I'm gonna go to the middle, and I'm gonna go far. And I'm gonna repeat that system all the way down the run that I've picked to fish and completely cover the entire section of river. I'm gonna go close again. Go up to the middle. Again, tip down, keeping that rod tip down towards the water, getting that spinner nice and deep, and just reeling just enough to keep that blade tight and spinning all the way through that hole. And then to the far. One thing that's important as you're doing this method is to not cast more than about 45 degrees upriver. Because what's gonna happen is if I cast too far upriver, that spinner is gonna be, one, really hard to get to spin because I have so much downriver velocity, but also I'm gonna stand the chance of getting snagged and losing my valuable spinner. So my cast should, on that close, middle, and far, be at about 45 degrees. If the other side of the river is 12 o'clock, I wanna be casting to about 10 on each cast so that I get that proper flow with the current and I get that proper depth. You don't wanna try to rely on casting way upriver to make your spinner sink. You wanna do that with your rod tip. If you want the spinner to go down in the water column, you point your rod tip down as you're reeling slowly. If you want it to come up to the surface, you raise your rod tip up and that spinner will come to the surface. The direction you point your rod tip will always dictate your depth. All right, the next type of water that spinners can be really versatile in is heavy structure. You can see here I'm standing in the middle of the river and I have this cut bank along this edge. I have overhanging brush and I have big boulders. The beauty of a spinner is you can fish small pockets with the spinner. If there's a rock out in the middle of the river that's only this big and it has a 5-foot window behind it that there might be fish, that's a great spot to find a trout. Because they're living in these lanes that all they do is live and feed. They sit there, whatever's easiest for them to do, the easiest way to live and the easiest place to eat, that's where the best spots are for big fish especially. So a spot like this, I'm gonna pick my structure. I have a big rock out here in front of me. I'm gonna cast just above it, get my line tight, fish that small pocket back behind it, and then once I've fished it, bring it back in. So this is more of like a spot technique where I'm hitting an exact spot in the river, getting right in that small area that I know those fish are gonna be, fishing it through, and then bringing it back in and working my way down. All right, here we go. Now I've covered that spot. I'm gonna take a couple steps down and I'm gonna keep working through. Oh, there's gotta be one in there. Come on. Little fresh creek coming in, big logs. So the beauty of fishing spinners for trout in creeks and rivers like this, you guys, is that you can fish them everywhere. You can fish them in deep water, you can fish them in fast water, and you can fish them in these bouldery pockets like you saw here behind me, which I think is one of my favorite ways to fish. So with all that being said, knowing the techniques, knowing the water to fish, let's cut to a little beat down scene of these spinners in action. Oh, got him. Got him. Oh, wow. Look at the unique nature of these spots. What a cool looking creature.
All right, sweetie, we'll see you later.
There you go. Ooh, that's a nice rainbow. Shiny one too. Look at him just shining in the light. Beautiful, beautiful trout. God, what a specimen, look at that. Oh, got him. Oh, that's a good one too. Really nice one. Looks like that one looks like a rainbow. He's got like a silvery, shiny tail. Oh wow, what a cool looking fish. Come on. Oh! Just a wild creature. What a fantastic animal. Look at those spots. Oh God, yep. Oh my God, that thing is freaking huge. Please stay on there. I gotta get down here out of these brush. This thing is a chunk. Oh my God. That is such a unique looking fish. Oh my gosh, come on, stay with me, Poppy. Stay with me. Okay, there we go, we got a little looser drag now. Oh my God, he's perfect. Come to daddy. Come to daddy. Yes, we did it. Oh my God, what a unique fish. That is a brown trout, everybody. If I've ever seen one. Look at this thing. All All right, the next technique I'm going to cover, guys, is one of my very favorite, and that is the fixed float setup. The rod I'm using is the same one as we use with the spinner. It's a 7.5 foot long Okuma Solilo. Really anything works for this as long as it's a little bit longer, because with this setup, we're going to be mending, we're going to be managing our line, and we're going to be making this float through the run perfectly in order to attract the fish. I still have the C30 Kymar on here, the 20-pound braid, and I've also tied that fluorocarbon or that monofilament bumper on there because it's very important to have for this float to go up and down. These floats are something that we're super excited to get out to you guys. They just came out about a year ago, and these are our addicted fixed floats, and this is our trout edition. There's a steelhead edition, there's a panfish edition, and then there's the trout edition, which hands down is one of my very favorite. The way this thing works is it has two little rubber grommets. You slide the first one on your line, you put the line through these two holes that are on the back side of the bobber, and then you slide the second rubber grommet on. The bottom one goes over that bottom stem, the top one goes over the top stem, and then this thing slides up and down to adjust to our depth of whatever run that we're fishing at the time. One thing I do to make sure I don't lose these nice bobbers is I tie a small swivel, just a plain barrel swivel, in line, and then attach my lighter line, which is a 6-pound test below that, and that's what I'm going to attach my lure to. The first lure I'm going to talk about is one of my very favorites, and again, it's another addicted product. All these addicted products you can find on our website, addicted.fishing, so go check it out. There's tons of options, tons of colors, and tons of fishy things on there for you guys to buy. What I have here is a 32nd ounce jig head and an addicted micro worm. This is our trout edition worm. We make these in a 3-inch and also a 6-inch worm, but these are our little micro worms that we use for this style of trout fishing. They come in probably 10 different colors, so there's lots of options to adapt to whatever fishery that you're fishing. But I've just tied that jig head straight on there, applied that worm right to the end, and then we'll show you guys how to fish it here in a second. The other thing I really like to put on the end of these, other than these micro worms, are woolly buggers and flies. Especially in natural environments like creeks and rivers, a lot of the trout in these areas are going to be feeding on bugs, and again, natural feed that they're going to be seeing every single day of their lives. And at times, it really does work better than anything else. I like these micro worms because especially in the springtime and in the summer, there's lots of bug hatches, there's lots of caterpillars and worms and different things on the banks of these creeks and rivers that are going to be falling off into the water, and the fish are going to be mainly feeding on those. But my fly box looks like this. I have basically two different styles of colors. I have some very natural flies. These are called stone flies. This is a bug that pretty much hatches in any body of water across the United States or the world. And these are what you call woolly buggers. These ones are my favorite. You can find them online places, but these have a tungsten jig head, so they're very heavy and they almost work like a micro jig. Even our addicted Sink It series jigs work really, really well for this. And if you can, if it's legal in your area, put a little bit of bait on the end of those and it works phenomenally. So the micro worms and the woolly buggers are the two methods I'm going to use on the end of the bobber today. Let's go fish it. Fish. All right, it's time to fish the float, everybody. And what we have behind us is a perfect float fishing hole. What you really want is something that's slower, is deeper, you can't really see the bottom, and you have the opportunity to have that float stand straight up and down and fish through calmly through that section of water where those fish are going to be living. So without further ado, let's get our float in here and try to catch a fish. Okay, here we go. So the key to a perfect float hole is to have something that doesn't have a whole lot of boils and upwellings like you're seeing here at the top of the hole. What's happening there is the water's hitting the bottom of the river and it's pushing back up. So what's going to happen, especially with this little bit lighter jig head, is this thing is going to get pushed right to the surface with that. It's not going to have the weight or the ability to sink down and get into the strike zone of the fish. And also the fish don't like it in those boily spots because they have a hard time staying in position as well. So that's why we want this area right here with this flat current, a nice foam line on the far side, and a nice tail out section of river where that jig can sit perfectly along the bottom and follow the track of the bottom of the river and go right into the fish's face. So what we're going to start with here is we're going to estimate our depth. It's better to start shallow and then work your way deep. So I can tell out there it's probably 6 to 8 feet deep, but inside close here, it's only about 3 or 4. So I'm going to start at that depth and I'm going to make my first cast. I always want to work my 45-degree angle, so I don't want to cast much higher than 45 degrees above me, and I don't want to let this bobber go about more than 45 degrees down below me because I'll have a hard time hooking the fish at that distance away. So here we go. We'll start at 45 upriver. And the key to properly fishing a float like this is the line management. You want that line, that yellow line, that high-vis line, to lay perfectly on the water above the bobber in a lot of situations so that it's floating naturally with the current. I'm not holding against it at all, pointing my bobber at me. The bobber should be pointed straight up and down the whole time and flowing downriver with the current. One easy way to tell if you're too deep or too shallow when you're fishing a run is if your bobber is pointed downriver naturally and your line is in position, that means you're dragging the bottom. If your float is pointing upriver, that means your line is too short, your jig is being pulled downriver and causing that bobber to point upriver. So a straight up and down float means you're fishing correctly. So I'm going to make my first cast and immediately change my depth. I'm gonna only use about 6-inch measurements too when I change my depth. I don't wanna go too extreme as I change up and down to try to find where these fish are. I'm gonna make my next cast about 10 more feet out into the river, same at that 45-degree angle. I'm gonna mend my line. When I say mend, that means lifting your line up, putting it above the bobber, laying it back down, and then letting the current take that float past you. Okay, third cast, I'm gonna go a little bit deeper here. I'm gonna cast a little bit further out in the river. And so you guys can already see the system that I'm developing. I'm going deeper and further with each cast. I'm not making the same cast the same time over and over and over again. I'm actually mathematically breaking down the hole and creating some sort of system and strategy to fishing this spot. As I work my way out farther into the hole, I'm gradually gonna be working my way deeper in towards the bottom of the hole as well. Now, one crucial thing with your line management is gonna be the angle that you hold your rod at. Our rods are not designed at this length to be held like this over the water. All you wanna do is put your wrist at 45 degrees, make the thumbs up sign, and have that rod tip pointed up off the water the whole time. And that in itself will help you manage your line correctly. What you want is not to have every bit of your line that's out laying on the water, because there's different water currents from here all the way out to where my float is floating in this situation, and in pretty much all situations. So, simple fact, simple rule. Always keep your wrist at 45, keep your hand in the thumbs up position, and make easy mends 3 times throughout your drift. Once at the beginning, once at the middle, and then once at the end. All right, so no luck in the deep hole today, but now I'm gonna work my way into this kind of structure. You can see here I have all this logs, all this debris, and trout love to live around stuff like that. One, there's a lot of insects that live on stuff like that, and two, it's cover from their predators from the sky. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be brave here, and I'm gonna work this kind of structure, working in along the logs, underneath the trees, and along these rocky shelves on these banks to try to find these fish. So I'm gonna start pretty shallow. In this case, it's always best to start shallow and fish shallow, because the fish will come out of the structure to eat your fly or your worm all the time because they feel protected and they're hidden. And they can see really well in this condition. So I'm gonna go right up along the log, see if we can't find a fish. All right, now that you guys know the rod reel, you know the type of water we're looking for, and you know the technique, let's cut to a little beat down scene of this style of float fishing in action. Oh, there he is. Yep, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Nice trout, all bent up, all bent up. It's safe to say the floats are killing it. Another beautiful trout. All right, thank you, little friend.
Oh, jumper cutthroat. Oh, he's a ripper. He's a ripper. This is a good one, guys. This is a really good one. Let's get him up here. Oh, that looks like a steelhead smolt. Got him. In the current. Another little guy. Oh, look at the red on him. Look at his gill plate right there. See you later, dude. Oh, good one. Really nice one, guys. Oh, what a pretty fish.
All right, last but not least is my new favorite and probably the most effective and fun way that I've learned to fish over the last few years, and that is with a sculpin twitching jig. I have this set up on a little bit lighter rod, a little bit shorter, because I'm gonna be casting into tight areas. I'm gonna be kind of making technical casts into spots, and having a longer rod can make that really difficult. This rod is 6.5 feet long, and it's 1 to 8 pound line rating, which means it's very light. You can see here how flexible this thing is. how much it bends, and that's why it's easier to cast, because I can use that soft tip to cast this jig into those tight areas. I have the same C30 Kymar, that same braided line on here, and the same bumper that we've talked about on each method, but on the end here is my little jig that I've made. Anything in this style will work. Our Addicted Sink It series jigs work really, really well for this, in the all black, in the chartreuse, any color that you think is going to adapt to the fishery that you're fishing. But the reason I'm using this is because sculpin is a little species of fish that live in just about every single body of water in the world, honestly. They're a small fish that inhabit the bottoms of these rivers, and a lot of times it's all these fish could be feeding on as far as the trout go. And what I've come to find over time is usually it's all the big fish that are going to be eating these. That's why it's one of my favorite methods. The fish absolutely crush it. Now it's time to go show you how to fish it. Okay, now this is perfect twitching water. And what makes this a good spot to fish this sculpin twitching jig is because it's an area that these real sculpin will actually live. If you look along the bank here, you see all this debris, you see all these big boulders, and you see the big rocks that's creating the structure for the habitat for these little guys. And they live down in between all these cracks and crevices and eat little insects and different things that come floating down the river, and they come out of the rocks, grab that stuff, and then go back to the bottom. And that is what we're trying to emulate, is these little guys coming up out of the rocks and then coming back down. The beauty of using these sculpin jigs is that usually it attracts the larger fish. You're not gonna get as many small trout and small salmon fry chasing these things, because really it's a meal for a bigger appetite, like a bigger fish. So what we want is water like we're looking at here. Pretty slow, about 4 to 6 feet deep, not too much current going across it, and a nice little back eddy even. Something that doesn't have a lot of downriver current is where we're gonna wanna do this, because it is a light jig and it's not gonna sink super fast in the really fast water. So let's step up to the water, give it a cast, see if we can get a fish. Okay. So the way I'm gonna start it, I'm gonna do it clockwise downriver. I'm gonna start my first cast up at the top of the hole, and after each cast, I'm gonna move my cast about 10 to 15 feet downriver so that I'm covering the entire area that I have in front of me here. So my first cast, I'm gonna make about the same length of distance each time. I'm gonna throw it right into that bubble line, and I'm gonna slowly bring this jig back, barely reeling, letting the current take a lot of the pressure on that line, and just giving little kicks and making that thing jump up and down as it comes back. So the main point is to not move it too fast and to keep it down there in the strike zone for as long as possible without getting snagged. Second cast, I'm gonna go downriver a little bit, let that thing sink, and then slowly work it back. You can see my jigs are only about a foot. Oh, that was a fish. Got bit, second cast. You can see the jigs that I'm making are only about a foot. I'm going from about waist level up to about my chest level as I'm doing this. So I'm going back out again. I think I got a good feeling about this cast. That was a fish that hit that. I'm doing these nice little short jigs with short reels in between, reeling about a half crank every time. And I'm just making that thing swim back to me. And the beauty of this technique is when a fish strikes, you know it. Damn, he didn't come back for it. Okay, making my cast slightly downriver again. I'm another 10 feet down. Let it sink and work it back in. All right, we didn't get that fish to come back, but there's a couple different styles of water that you can fish with these jigs. So let's go find the second. Once again, I'm gonna start clockwise here. I always wanna break my cast down to actually mathematically break down the hole. I don't wanna just cast out there in the middle of the thing on the first cast and miss all the fish that could potentially be on this left side. I wanna cast to the left, slowly work my way to the right, and that's a really surefire way to start catching more fish when you're out on the water, by breaking the hole down and catching the fish that are here before you catch the fish that are here, and then before you catch the fish that are over here in the main channel. Using a little bit of technique with it and being methodical on how you fish the hole will ultimately make you a better trout fisherman. Okay, now here we have our last but not least style of water that I like to fish these jigs in, and it's that moving current. You see how we all have all these boulders and all the structure still on the bank. We have a fast moving current out in the middle, and that's what we're gonna use to fish this jig in this situation. Normally where this would be really hard to get it down and deep into the section of water that you wanna be in to have those fish see the jig, I'm gonna use the current here to my advantage to where I'm not even gonna have to reel as I start casting. I'm gonna cast out here, I'm gonna let it sink, and I'm literally just gonna be able to use that current, let it swing into the bank. I'm almost swinging this thing like you would a fly, and I'm just letting that thing swing in towards the bank, slowly moving my jig up and down, and letting it start to swing right into that structure, into those rocks where those fish are gonna be. Just like that. He's swimming, he's having a nice day, and then he's gonna get eaten. So same thing, I'm gonna move my cast about 10 feet downriver, I'm gonna let it sink, and that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna point my rod tip right at it, slow jigs, and let that swing right into the bank. Just like so. Next cast, I'm about another 10 feet farther, a little bit further out there, I'm gonna let that sink, and I'm just gonna let that swing in. And you see how, because of that current, I'm not having to reel at all, I'm not having to put any extra tension on my line to keep that jig off the bottom. And I'm just gonna let that sculpin swim right into the bank, right into those big boulders where he likes to live, and maybe he gets eaten. All right, so now that we've covered the gear, the tactic, the holes that you wanna fish, and the strategy, let's cut to a little beat down scene of these jigs in action. Oh, there he is, I got him. Oh, Jesus. He tried to beach himself. This thing is out of control. Oh my God, look at him go, look at him go. Holy crap. Oh my God, what is this thing? What a way to break in the new jig. Oh, wow, look at the colors on that thing. Incredible.
Look out while you guys fish.
Oh, there we go.
What's a big one? It's huge.
Yo, it's a big rainbow. That is running away. I got a really nice beach.
Wow.
Size of this cat, huh? Look at the spots on that.
Look at that frickin' specimen.
Isn't he awesome? Look at that.
Holy crap. That is a real red side trout right there.
It is.
Pride of the West.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, that is a wrap for today's video. And if you guys have any more questions on what you saw here today and want to learn more, be sure to go down in the comment section below and drop those questions, and we'll do our best to answer them and get you even more knowledge on how to go out and enjoy the great outdoors and chasing these amazing little fish we call trout. If you guys want to see more fun videos just like you saw today, go up here and click this link to this next video. Go down, hit subscribe, turn those bells on, give this video a thumbs up, and comment below, and you can be the comment of the day, just like this person right here. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. You stay fishy. We'll see you out there.